Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today we are continuing my Steven Universe Redesign series, and this time I'll be redesigning some of the fusions. I hope you enjoy! The first fusion I wanted to redesign was, without a doubt, Steg, Steven and Greg's fusion. I've never really liked this design. When I look at him, nothing makes me think, yeah, that's definitely a father and son fusion. Instead, he just comes across as kind of vulgar. I don't know if it's the facial features, the expressions, or just the overall vibe, but it really doesn't work for me. For my redesign, I decided to make Steg look like a normal human. One thing I've never understood is why the original has 4 arms. Greg is completely human, and Steven is half human. So having such an alien-looking fusion doesn't really make sense to me. Instead, I imagine this fusion working more like Stevoni, a more human-looking combination of Steven and Connie. In my interpretation, Steg is simply looking blend of Greg and Steven. I wanted him to have a relaxed, easygoing personality. Someone who's kind, charismatic, and just a little bit flirty without feeling over the top. Overall, it's a pretty simple redesign, but I think it's a much more effective interpretation of what a Greg and Steven fusion could look like. The next fusion is Rainbow Quartz 2.0. I actually don't mind this fusion too much. If I had to be really picky, I'd say I'm not a fan of the hair. I also don't like that every fusion involving Steven has to inherit obvious pieces of the original character's outfits. That's a rule that only seems to apply to Steven's fusions, while the other fusions get much more freedom in their designs. Also, can we talk about the name for a second? Why is this fusion called Rainbow Quartz 2.0? By the time this fusion is introduced, we already know that rose quartz was actually pink diamond, not a quartz. So the name already feels a little outdated. But what bothers me even more is the 2.0 part. It makes it sound like Steven is just Rose version 2, as if he's a replacement or an upgraded copy of his mother. Steven is his own person. He's not Rose, and I don't think the fusion's name should imply that he is. I know the name is probably meant as a reference to the original Rainbow Quartz, but I've never been a fan of the implication. Anyway, putting the name aside and focusing on the redesign, I wanted this fusion to embody an androgynous kind of beauty. I imagined someone elegant, delicate, soft-looking, but also incredibly sassy and confident. Out of all the redesigns in this video, this one is probably my personal favorite. And the last fusion is Sunstone. My biggest issue with this design is the lack of a proper face. I felt it makes the character less expressive and a little harder to connect with. For my redesign, I decided to have some fun and drew two different versions of Sunstone. One represents Ruby being the dominant influence, while the other represents Sapphire taking the lead. I originally wanted to make a third version with Steven as the dominant influence, but it ended up looking way too similar to Stevoni, so I decided to leave it out. Unlike Steg, I kept the 4 arms for this fusion. Since Sunstone is a fusion of 3 people, and 2 of them are full gems, I think having a more inhuman appearance actually makes sense here. I also turned Ruby and Sapphire's wedding rings into armbands. I wanted to keep the symbolism of their marriage, but having the actual wedding rings on a fusion that includes Steven felt a little strange, since he's obviously not married. The armbands felt like a good compromise that still represents their bond. For the hair, I made it entirely out of fire. Ruby's version has bright red flames to reflect her passionate, fiery personality, while Sapphire's version has cool blue flames to match her calm and collected nature. Finally, I leaned into a much more feminine silhouette for both versions. I wanted Sunstone to feel graceful and elegant, while still looking incredibly powerful. A fusion that balances Ruby's passion, Sapphire's poise, and Steven's warmth. These are my Steven Universe Fusion redesigns. Let me know what fusions you'd like to see me redesign next. I'd love to hear your suggestions, and I'll pick some of them for the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.